Welcome, everyone, to an exciting series of the Callaway Connection, sponsored by Callaway Family Association, found at. I'm your host, Tyrone Claybrook. Our guest today, Mr. David Callaway, is a publisher, journalist, writer, researcher, and family man. He is an innovative global editor whose background includes the Boston Herald, Bloomberg News London, and USA Today. In March 2020, David founded Callaway Climate Insights, a digital newsletter tied to the intersection of climate change and finance. He is coming to us today representing Callaway Family Association. He's going to take us on an amazing 10 to 12-minute genealogical trip. You'll find his insight and journey can be applied to a multitude of families. However, today, we will be on a trip of Callaway connections from the United States, perhaps through Ireland, United Kingdom, landing us into the beautiful country of France. For many of us, this will be an illustration of how small the world can become towards finding our seemingly lost heritage and family through understanding, language, geography, DNA research, and perhaps a wee bit of luck. So without any further ado, our world traveler, Mr. David Callaway.
Thank you, Tyrone, for that boisterous and lively intro. I really appreciate it. Hello, everybody. I'm David Callaway. I'm a 40-year journalist, a former editor of USA Today. As Tyrone said, I write a climate finance newsletter now, and I travel the world looking for interesting stories, not just about climate, not just about news and finance, but lately, about the Callaway family. I've been fascinated with our history, going back for hundreds of years in the U.S. and really recently started to dig deeper and found that we actually go back thousands of years. This is a great week for us to be doing this podcast. It's June 2024, and this week is the 80th anniversary of D-Day in Normandy. And Western governments, US, UK, France, they'll all be celebrating D-Day this week, this month, and really all summer with trips to Normandy to see the famous beaches where the landing was on June 6th, 1944, and the cemeteries of those who lost their lives, establishing an Allied beachhead in Europe. But Normandy 80 years ago wasn't the first type of battles in Normandy. People have been fighting battles and wars there for more than 1,000 years. And on a recent trip to France to look at some of these beaches, I found evidence of Callaways in Normandy more than 1,000 years ago. It's really fascinating because if you look at our Callaway family history, the Callaway Family Association, of which both Tyrone and I are board members on, does a lot of genealogical work, and it tracks us back through the generations from the present time to around the late 1600s, where two original ancestors, Joseph in Virginia and Peter in Maryland, were among the first Callaways to be recorded in America. The Callaway Family Association has done a ton of work over almost 50 years, establishing the connections and ties from those two original ancestors all the way to present-day Callaways. There's some 22,000 of us in the U.S. But we've always had this problem about, where did Peter and Joseph come from? And we don't have the exact DNA connection to establish who the exact parents were of each one, and where they were from. We believe they were from England. We believe they're from the Cornwall region. And if you look into English history, it's replete with names like Callaway, Kellaway, and all sorts of different spellings all throughout the UK, Scotland, and Ireland. So there is a rich history there that goes back almost 1,000 years, but we still need to make that connection to establish where we fit in that history. Anyway, I'm a big fan of Europe. As Tyrone said, I was a foreign correspondent for Bloomberg in the 1990s in London, spent a lot of time traipsing around covering news stories in Europe. I went back this spring to Paris with my daughter, my 30-year-old daughter, Alexandra. with the goal of finding more about the Callaway history. Last year, we had gone to Cornwall and we had visited the Callaway Church, a famous place in St. Neo, Cornwall, not too far from Plymouth, where there is a stained glass window dating from the 15th century that says, St. Callaway, pray for me. So we don't know if we have a saint in our family or whether that was just some elaborate way to get your name on the wall of the church at the time and pay for your name. But we do know there were Callaways in Cornwall in the 1500s. Now comes evidence that the Callaways may have actually come from France, from Normandy, hundreds of years before that. And so I started looking into it, and I dug up this little town in Normandy called Callaway, Caillouet. Some might say Callawet. It's about an hour and 20 minutes drive northwest of Paris. It's an easy drive towards the town of Evreux in Normandy. And so one day in March, my daughter and I set out. We rented a car in Paris, got out of the town, drove to Callaway. And what you're seeing here on the Zoom share screen is our pictures of the town. You know, for those of us in the US, it's not much of a town, it's more of a neighborhood. I counted maybe 20 or 30 homes. This picture right here is of a church. The church is deserted and locked. There is a graveyard with stones that are 600 and 700 years old, what we can make out. Didn't find any Callaways, but if you go back, if you go through, that's a better view of the church and the graveyard on that cloudy March day. Here's me. I'll go back to that one. Here's me. If you go back to me with the sign of Callaway, yeah, there it is. That's the entrance to town. It's just off a highway. It's literally a small road on the way to the highway to Evreux. But if you have your GPS and you look for Callaway, you'll find it. You'll take a left, and I'm standing maybe 250, 300 yards from the highway right there. As you go further into town, if we can move the pictures, you see again the church. Let's do a couple more. Couple more pictures of the town. There you go. There's the graveyard. That's my daughter looking at for Callaway names on the graves. I think there's one more picture in there. No, that's it. There we go. Another picture of the church. But there's several homes around it. It's really kind of a suburban neighborhood of the town of Evreux, where there's a main street and local taverns and restaurants and cheese shops and churches and the like. But it's a fabulous place to go, and it dates back to the 5th century, to the 14th century, excuse me, 1400s. And so we know that it's possible that the Callaways came over from France as part of the migration of the Huguenots being persecuted in the Normandy area in that century. A lot of them left and went to UK. And those of you who follow the kind of close collaboration between the English and French languages know that a lot of English words were originally French words and kind of changed over the decades and the centuries. And so it's possible that Callaway became Callaway or Callaway. There's a great website, which I'm going to give you in a few minutes, if you want to do your own research on the Callaways in the UK and in Europe. But first, a little more about the journey. So after we left Callaway, we drove over to the Normandy beaches and looked at that, and it was fascinating. And anyone who's not been there should definitely go and check it out. I was really intrigued by Callaway and what the town had to offer. So I went to this website, which I was directed to by another Callaway Family Association board member. Her name is Leslie Hay. Leslie, Leslie, Hay, Haigh. She lives in the UK. And the name of the website is just Les Hay, LESHAIGH.co.uk. Go to this website, you find a fabulous, collection of research into the Callaway names and the Callaway names. Callaway with a K, it's a big name in the UK. And if you go, you click onto the website, you click down, there's a link called Callaway Research Index. You click onto that, you go to the bottom of that, and there's a big prompt that says Callaway Research Notes and Stories. Go to that, and there's a list of about 30, 40, 50 really cool stories. One of those stories about a knight in the 10th century named Guillaume de Calais. That's Guillaume, as in William, of Calais, Cailly. Calais is a town in Normandy also. It's about an hour and 15 minutes northeast of Callaway, and it's near the bigger town of Rouen. And Guillaume de Callaway was a knight who, according to show, was fought in the Battle of Hastings, which was William the Conqueror's invasion of the UK in 1066, a very famous date in UK history, because William the Conqueror successfully killed Charles I and invaded the UK, made it all the way to London, built the Tower of London at the time, or the original edifices in the Tower of London. And Guillaume de Callaway survived. There's a poem about him listed on this website that shows he fought bravely and stuff like that. And then he settled in London. And so there's some who think that the original Callaway might have come, even 400 or 500 years earlier than the ones we know of in Cornwall, the ones who came from the Huguenots. So it's a fascinating story for anybody who's into history, who's into the history of the Callaway family, or just who's into any sort of, history of how people migrated through Europe and over to the U.S. in the 1600s. Our trip was just about a few days, and I could have stayed a lot longer. I would have loved to have gone to Calais, but we didn't have the time to do it. So we'll be going back, and we'll do that. But it's, I highly suggest that anybody who's into Callaway history add pilgrimages to Cornwall, in particular St. Neo's Church, and to Callaway in Normandy, France, as part of a larger journey, maybe. But it's a great way to discover what may be our shared family history. And the last thing I'll say, Tyrone, is that I referenced this at the beginning, but we talked about making that connection from Peter and Joseph Callaway, the late 1600s in Virginia and Maryland, to the UK Callaways. This website that Leslie has built, leshay.co.uk, is a fabulous research tool for anybody who wants to look at it. It's free, and it's available on the web. We still are trying at the Callaway Family Association to get enough DNA samples from Callaways who exist today, or Callaways, who are close Callaway family members, and we don't have enough. And we need a lot more to be able to finally make that match, because it's clear that once we get the match from Peter and Joseph, we know we can go back for several hundred more years than we already have. The history is there, it's replete, it just needs to be discovered. And so we want to ask those of you who are interested and find this podcast interesting and want to go and visit some of these Callaway family areas, that you consider reaching out. I believe there's instructions on the website, Callaway Family Association website, on how to reach out if you wanted to give a DNA sample. It costs a little money, but I think it's painless, and it would really be helpful. So that's the story. I'll continue my wanderings around Europe. If I find any more evidence of Callaways, particularly in Ireland, where I'm going this summer, I'll be sure to report back. And that's all I got, Tyrone.
That's a very fascinating story. We're so glad that you could take the time to open up visually some things for us to see on where this road of traveling with the Callaway family might lead to. You did mention something I think is very important for people, again, to always try to take care of the opportunity to get engaged in DNA research by simply at least getting some of that testing that's done, because that helps us to connect the dots, sometimes over hundreds of years. You also mentioned about this town of Normandy, and then you mentioned Virginia. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe there is a National D-Day Memorial in Bedford County, Bedford, Virginia, that people can also go visit, that has a museum there that honors many of the people that fought and died. And I believe it was Bedford, Virginia, that had the largest number of casualties that actually were engaged in that beach war. What do you know about that, or do you know that to be true?
I don't know if it was the largest number of casualties. I know there was a Bedford group that was fighting on D-Day, and that they suffered a large amount of casualties. I did know that there was a monument, a museum of sorts, to those who fought and died at D-Day in Bedford, Virginia. And so, yeah, I would highly recommend anyone who wants to just start out in the U.S. and doesn't want to go to France or the U.K. for whatever reason, to go to Virginia, because the history of the Callaways in Virginia is all right there, back from the late 1600s through the French and Indian War, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War. It's all right there, and I think the later this year in 2024, there's going to be a Callaway Family Association meeting in and around there, where we're going to have some really interesting historical recreations, if you will.
Well, thank you. Yes, I do understand there's quite a bit of history there, right in Bedford County, Virginia, and I encourage our listening audience to definitely, if they get an opportunity, to take a trip to Bedford. If they don't know where that is, that's kind of sandwiched halfway in between Lynchburg and Roanoke, Virginia. Fabulous place to visit. So we appreciate your time, David. Again, if those of you are interested and want more information regarding newsletters and informations on the Callaway family, perhaps there may even be information that is not necessarily of your family, but will give you some insight on how to look further in finding out your lost heritage, your lost family, or just wondering what the origin of your name is. So these linguistics, geography, and we're just so thankful that David could make that trip that many of us will not be able to make. But again, if you're interested in the Callaways, again, that's Callaway. So whether you're from Virginia, Maryland, Texas, Missouri, or other states within the U.S., you might want to check out Callaway's and the Callaway Connections. We know David has done other interviews for us. So if you want more information, go a little bit deeper, please check in back with us with family and our Callaway Family Association. You'll find us on the internet. God bless you.